I've built many SaaS projects on my own. And now that there's AI tools, because it used to take me like 3 to 6 months to get something out into the market, see if anyone cared. And now that there's AI tools, I'm like, okay, cool. I could do the same thing in a week or 2 weeks, right? What used to take me 3 months. And now I'm like, if I don't have a clear go-to-market plan, I just don't even start with the code. Whereas before, it would have been like, oh, I'm going to start writing code and it's going to take me 3 months and I'll figure it out along the way. Now I just think like, do I have a way to ship this to customers? If the answer's not clear, I don't even bother. So I've rejected way more ideas now than I have previously because I am thinking about go-to-market much earlier in the process. And it's not a particular strength of mine. I'm still figuring that part out. So yeah, like I have a lot of personal experience with this impacting the way I think about and what I ship because I've shipped way fewer SaaS products since AI coding has become popular.
Welcome to another episode of Supra Insider. In this episode, Ben and I were joined by our friends and returning guests, Tal Raviv and Colin Matthews, for a deep dive into how AI is transforming product management. In the episode, we cover Tal's survey on AI prototyping among product managers, how to help PMs reach that aha moment with AI tools, how go-to-market still remains the real bottleneck here. We also talked about Colin's approach to evaluating side projects through different distribution channels. We also talked about why companies struggle with rewarding innovative failures and different approaches that we're taking to solo entrepreneurship and maintaining focus. If you're someone who is curious about how AI is reshaping product work and team dynamics, you won't want to miss this episode. Enjoy.
If you enjoy this conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcasting app. Follow us on Substack. Give us a rating. It'll help us a ton and help future people discover us while also making sure you never miss an episode. Thank you. All right. We are live. We have Tal back on the pod for, I believe, the third time. So this is your Supra Insider hat trick. Congratulations. Colin is here for, I believe, the second time, but hopefully you get your hat trick too soon. So thanks both of you for joining us.
Yeah, awesome to be here.
My pleasure.
It's our pleasure, Tal. We wanted to start today's conversation with some findings that, Tal, you have from a recent survey that you did. And it's going to touch a lot on how people are thinking about AI evolving various parts of the product culture, product processes, how teams work. So I don't want to steal your thunder, but maybe we can start by you just walking us through a little bit of the context, like why'd you run the survey? What was it about? And then what are the biggest kind of like learnings?
Sure. I ran the survey because I realized I have this list of a ton of product managers, and I think their common denominator is they want to use AI better. They assume that everybody's using it better than they are, and there's a lot of anxiety around that, and also no real way for product managers to share notes. It's very hard. It's a very lonely role. So I basically sent out an email. I was like, are you actually using AI prototyping? If so, how? And I was just like, just replied to this email. So it wasn't like a form. Some people wrote paragraphs, some people wrote a little bit, and I engaged them in conversation. And then I went through all those threads and I manually, this is no AI. I tried AI, it didn't work. Manually classified it. So basically it looks like this. It's a Google sheet.
And by the way, how do you define AI prototyping? Because I know we probably have alignment, but there's some people that are probably not aligned on that definition.
It's a good point too. Some survey respondents also responded to like a different question than what I thought I was asking. For the most part, and the ones that I included here, it means using AI to generate like a web app, front-end code, like an interface that is visual, clickable. So that kind of prototype.
Cool.
So each row here,
like bold,
as you can see, it's a different product manager. What's that?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was just giving some examples. I was rudely interrupting you. You can go ahead.
So yes, exactly. Like tools like Bolt, V0, Lovable, Replit. And each row here is another individual that responded. So I kind of really like visualizing this way. And then each of the colors, like the emojis, is like, did they mention a use case, which are the columns? Did they mention that positively or did they mention that negatively? And so then I'll put on my like weatherman voice here. You can see moving from the right to the left here, right? You have a pretty clear pattern. And that's how I ordered the columns. Basically, like that all the way on the right are like cases around internal communication, getting your own thoughts in order, right? And dare I say internal tooling, or reusability. And those are like almost entirely positive experiences. All the way on the left is people are complaining about the learning curve, you need technical skills. It's really difficult whenever you're starting from an established product. I think it's also a matter of setting expectations if they're talking about those frustrations. Or some people just didn't find a use case at work. And then like in the middle is people, this is all, I didn't ask people to cover these things. This is like things that naturally they brought up on their own. What it was like for a designer to see that they were, as a product manager, AI prototyping. And that's where it's like very mixed. So the yellow is like people, one person reporting both positive and negative experiences, like some designers, yes, some designers, no. Green is the designers reacted really positively and we're really happy with that. And red is, politics. So yeah, it was cool because it really showed, this was about a month ago, and it really showed like the state of the union. I don't know if this is where things could be, if it's a matter of perception or people not using it well, but this is like right now where people are, where product managers are.
Yeah. One thing that sticks out to me from this is column K, internal tooling and training, seeming like almost empty. And I wonder if that's partially because internal tools like platforms like Retool or Superblocks or some other platforms that have gotten a foothold in internal tool, like no code solutions, have just made it so easy for people to already build software without needing to know how to code, that maybe that's an area that hasn't gotten like penetrated as much by AI prototyping. I'm curious to get your guys' reaction on that.
Just to make sense.
Unless you're a platform. Yeah. I mean, unless you're a platform PM, like I've never worked on an internal tool or like that I've built from software. I think like the closest that I work from internal tool is maybe I created a better spec template for the product org, or maybe I've created like a better deck to do product teardowns. But yeah, I just feel like I've never contributed to an internal tool for my team or any company that I worked at.
Yeah, I'll maybe chime in on this one too. I think this goes in line with like the technical skills, because internal tools need to work. It's not just like how it looks. So it needs to integrate with your existing data or have authentication and security and all that stuff. So I think like the skill level to ship an internal tool beyond something super basic helps your marketing team reformat an image is much higher than the basics of AI prototyping, like just getting something to look right. So I'm not entirely surprised by that. And yeah, I think Ben, you nailed it with like either existing tooling, existing platforms, or other solutions that they have already for that.
And yeah, we were also like, Ben, the thing that I'm thinking here too is like we were talking to John Cutler yesterday, and he was saying how I feel like a lot of the internal tooling work has been picked up by ops teams because they have higher incentives to almost fix those things. So maybe that's why like PMs feel like, hey, this is out of scope for me, as opposed to this is something that I want to work on. What do you think, Tal?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all those, right? There's great alternatives. Colin said internal tools need to work, and they're part of existing backends. And yeah, product, like you said, right? Like product managers do this less and less thanks to those tools, Retool. And I also want to highlight, I remember these responses, it's like a mixed column. So some of it is not even like internal tools like we think Retool. It's actually, like you mentioned, like here's a tool that will help you think through X, that will help you follow this process, that will help you write this kind of document. Yeah, it's a very sparse column.
I also feel like I've PM'd multiple internal tools at different startups. And let's just say when I think of AI prototyping right now, it feels like vibe coding, it feels fun, it feels exploratory. And let's just say that internal tools generally are not the most inspiring and fun places to route your creativity. You're just looking for solutions that will just get the job done because no one's ever going to see it externally and there won't be a huge difference based on it. I suspect that's also probably one of the reasons is like people just don't get jazzed up maybe like using AI prototyping tools for internal stuff that no one's ever going to see on the outside.
Yeah,
I will say a really cool use of AI prototyping that I heard is exactly because the challenge was really boring. It was like taking a process that was like very manual behind the scenes and like data, like a very complex schema, and turning it into an admin tool. And so what this PM did, they like fed the schema to the prototyping tool and said, make the admin tool for it with the following abilities. And then that saved everybody time. That was like such a win-win because it was so tedious otherwise.
That's a really good point. And I think it furthers the thing we talked about last time around making product management fun again, right? I think these tools can take things that are mundane or boring and add a fun creative spin to them, right?
Yeah. Also, maybe like now shifting gears a little bit too, kind of like looking at this survey, like the way I'm looking at it right now by the colors and the columns, I almost feel like there's like two groups of people who are like, quote unquote, have seen the matrix and get how to use these tools and get the value of them. And basically people that like don't almost. Like, for example, like you look at the first like maybe 18 rows or 20 rows, right? Like they're all saying, hey, like I don't see a use case for this, or not relevant for my work, or I don't think I can start off with established product. And then obviously they're not seeing any of the benefits, like having better conversations or helping me get my thoughts in order. But then the people that kind of see that, then they have a use case. And that's kind of like my interpretation of it. But maybe, Colin, I'm curious to get your take. Are there maybe like some industries or type of products where actually it doesn't make sense to use these tools, or you think it's actually kind of like people understanding like the potential of these tools?
Yeah, I guess my hypothesis here is it's actually like just a massive activation problem where people bounce on the tool very quickly, very early. And I think part of that is because the tools don't really hold your hand. There's, like a gradient from less complex to more complex. But even the less complex ones, if you just type in recreate my internal tool, it does these two things. It's going to be a garbage output. It's going to look nothing like it. It's not going to function properly. And so, yeah, I think there's just a high bounce rate on one is like understanding how to interact with the tools better and then getting to the intended outcome. And then probably those people who get to the intended outcome start to see the benefits. And it's just not obvious when you're looking at a chat box that like it's more than just typing into the chat box to get to the result that you want. Yeah, that's my kind of hypothesis on that one.
I have a follow-up for you, Colin. You've at this point seen probably more people than any of us go from never maybe touching one of these tools or being just like curious about something like Bolt or V0 or Lovable to getting to the aha moment where the light bulb goes off. And I'm just curious, are there any common themes that you've noticed and what gets the most people to that light bulb moment?
Yeah, actually, it's funny that you asked this. So the course that I teach is designed intentionally to have people try and fail early and then try and succeed with a change, right? Because the first step is people are scared to try. And so I just want to get over that as quickly as possible. Like just do the thing. And then when it doesn't work the way they were expecting, then it's like, how do we clean it up? How do we make it better? And that's basically the rest of the course, to be honest, is like continuing to go deeper and deeper on how do we do better. And yeah, some like quick things, like one is, we talked about this, I think last time, like basically having a plan, using some type of system prompt is probably the biggest like single action in terms of a lift, which is just giving it instructions on every request to do what you want it to do. So have a plan on every request, use these patterns on every request. And like visual artifacts as well make a huge difference. So, and screenshots are great, but even draw it on a napkin and take a picture and put it in, it doesn't even matter. But those are kind of like the big lifts. And again, where people like just type in 6 words and hit go, and then it doesn't work. That's usually the biggest problem that I've seen.
Pretty fascinating to me that someone thinks that dropping 6 words into a text field and hitting enter is going to somehow get them something that's going to be in line with what they were picturing, right?
Yeah,
it's kind of presumptuous, right?
Unless you're Naval, it's not going to work out.
I actually think this has more to do with technical fluency than anything else. And I'd be curious for your guys' take on this, because once you have a mental model of like how software works, it seems obvious that you wouldn't type in 6 words and expect it to produce the outcome. If you don't have the mental model and you think it's like mostly just pictures, like why wouldn't it work? Because you can't think of why it wouldn't work. So that's, anyway, again, just a theory, but I think like having that level of technical depth helps you be like, I'm going to ask for these specific things. It's going to be structured this way. I want components in the front end application, blah, 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 rather than just make me a picture. If I open up OpenAI and I say, make me a picture, it works, or ChatGPT. So what's the difference?
Yeah, I almost wonder, I guess it's hard to know without what's the strategy of these companies, but I almost like, Ben, I think your push is a fair push of like, why are these people not like, why do they think like they can just get away with 6 words? But like, also, if they don't know better, can we actually put the blame on them? Shouldn't these tools maybe do a better job at onboarding and being like, hey, actually, like, I'm not going to spit anything out because I cannot work with this. Come back with me and here's the information that I need. Or if custom instructions are so important, like, why is not the first step being like, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about what you're trying to accomplish here? And like here, like what we've seen that very successful users do is they spend maybe 20 minutes or 30 minutes thinking about these things. I don't know. I feel like that's something that's surprising that maybe these tools don't do a little bit more of.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing from you is like, why are there not more opinionated onboarding flows or like happy paths for people to go from exploring to getting the value? And I'm curious what Tal and Colin think, but my initial reaction to that is these tools are so flexible and like they can do so many different things. There's so many, it's like there's an infinite canvas of things you could do. Pretty much if it's codable on the front end, you could do it in these tools, right? I think if I was putting myself in the shoes of the PM or the founder at these companies and I'm trying to keep my aperture wide to serve the largest audience possible, it feels like prematurely confining and constraining the onboarding experience in an opinionated way could potentially alienate people who are in the target audience. Like maybe that's part of it.
Yeah, but maybe it doesn't have to be like a very opinionated onboarding experience. Maybe it also has to be like some like guardrails, like to make sure that you don't end up in a spot where like we can all agree that's universally bad. Like the 6 words, I don't know in which world, no matter how experienced or you're not, that's a good thing. So I think that's maybe what I'm saying of like maybe like preventing those failure states a little bit more. But yeah, I'm curious, what do you guys think, Tal or Colin?
It's funny. I think the same ailment plagues ChatGPT or Claude, right? It's the same exact issue. And I think, let's say you think about using deep research, like OpenAI's deep research, you're already starting to see it play back and then ask for clarification as part of the product, no matter what you do. And it's right. I think it speaks to the point of they're being really careful. It's like how they don't want to be too opinionated and not constrained too much, but they're like, we need to do something. Otherwise, this tool is the more powerful the tool, we need to do something. I think Replit, and maybe Colin, maybe you've seen this in other tools, Replit definitely suggests more features and has the prompt like cleanup or prompt improver. There's all these like little things that they're like, I guess they're experimenting with, like how do you get all the benefits of opinionated and let's make you better at using us, but not constrain the people who, already have lots of ideas or.
Yeah, agreed. I think Replit, they do have a 2-step system right now. They're the only ones out of the set that do, which is like you put in your prompt, it makes a plan first, decides what tools or integrations are relevant to that plan, and then kicks off the plan. So there's pros and cons to that because sometimes it goes too far. Like it takes a little while and it goes like way further than you were expecting, or it adds things you didn't want. So I think it is pretty hard to get precise. I think the other reason personally why like they're not doing this is because we're not the target market. Like we found a use case for this tool that wasn't maybe like the intended or expected use case, but almost all of them, like I think their MRR is coming from people who want to build projects for themselves. It is not people aren't signing. Bolt doesn't have 40 million ARR of PMs. It's people who see the ability to create software for the first time, have an idea, and want to see if they can ship it. So it's not necessarily prototyping as the primary use case. And so I think, yeah, I agree that constraining to PMs is not the best idea for onboarding, but maybe an opportunity for someone else to do that then.
I'm wondering how successful those people are. Like the people, if the people who don't know better, let's say, or maybe a little bit more technically naive, are the ones that are spending all this money on Bolt and these different products. And they're like, I can finally build this idea that I've been wanting to build forever. I don't have to work with a dev shop. I don't have to find a co-founder. I'm just curious how long it's going to take before we start to hear how successful that is on a medium-term time frame. Are those products actually making their way to market and getting real users, or are they actually dying in the last mile of delivery? Any of you have?
Yeah.
Do any of you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, that was going to be like my next question is, does any of you know any product that is used at scale, right? That has been like fully built with any of these like tools, right? Like Bolt, Lovable, Replit. Because like, I know, for example, like Colin, like you've been tinkering on a bunch of side projects. And I believe you maybe start sometimes with one of these tools, like you end up moving to Cursor right away, right? Because like, you feel constrained to those tools. And I have a lot of friends who are also tinkerers who've been building side projects, and that tends to be the case as well. Like it's maybe good to get maybe like that 80% and the idea and all the moving pieces, but then after that you probably want to move to something else that kind of will give you the flexibility, and that also allows you to move faster. But yeah, I'm curious, has anyone seen any of these tools that you're like, hey, 100% built with Replit or Bolt that it's being used at scale?
Yeah, I don't think so, to be honest. I'm sure there are people out there who built entire projects, but I think it's less common. If someone had built like a $10 million ARR app on Replit, I'm sure we would see that in their ads. Do you know what I mean? I think it's less common that.
But it's also too early, right? If you think about it, I mean, I've only really been tracking this stuff, I think, Colin, since like you started talking about it a lot. But like, how long have these tools even been available the way we're thinking about them right now?
Yeah, Bolt was October, so it was all around the same time frame,
like 5-6 months.
Yeah. So even if you think about the fastest growing companies that we know that we're built like the quote unquote regular way, where were they 6 months from like breaking ground on the code base, right? So I think there's going to be some time, but I'm excited to see the success stories.
I have a friend, and now my neighbor, really good friend, who built a product that he made his first sale to a Fortune 100 company. I will say that, and I think this explains a lot, he is one of the most like fast learning, very technical. He hasn't been in an engineering role in a very long time, but he started his career as a software engineer. He is incredibly patient. He's incredibly persistent. And he's definitely had to apply his technical knowledge at like very critical junctures. So I think he's very much an outlier, both in terms of personality and skills. And also he's the first to say, he's like, yeah, it's all about go to market. He's like, this just emphasizes that even in the best case scenario where all the right things come together, he's like, the real bottleneck is go to market. And I think what's funny is like, even with all the attention to like, oh, you can do it with AI now, the bottleneck has like always been go to market. You know what I mean? Like the bottleneck was never writing code. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, it's almost like
a cool outlier. I think it's just an outlier.
Yeah, it's funny because now it's the same bottleneck as always, but now it's like you hit that bottleneck much quicker because you like actually have a prototype. So you have to confront the demon much faster.
I actually have a lot of personal experience with this because like I've built many SaaS projects on my own. And now that there's AI tools, because it used to take me like 3 to 6 months to get something out into the market, see if anyone cared. And now that there's AI tools, I'm like, okay, cool. I could do the same thing in a week or 2 weeks, right? What used to take me 3 months. And now I'm like, if I don't have a clear go-to-market plan, I just don't even start with the code. Whereas before it would have been like, oh, I'm going to start writing code and it's going to take me 3 months and I'll figure it out along the way. Now I just think like, do I have a way to ship this to customers? If the answer is not clear, I don't even bother. So I've rejected way more ideas now than I have previously because I am thinking about go-to-market much earlier in the process. And it's not a particular strength of mine. I'm still figuring that part out. So yeah, like I have a lot of personal experience with this impacting the way I think about and what I ship because I've shipped way fewer SaaS products since AI coding has become popular. More internal tools, I would say. Like I've talked about this before. Like I have a referral system for Maven. I have a showcase people can submit to. So I shipped a bunch of things for myself, but not things for other people because I'm much more like stringent on the criteria now than I was a year ago. So it's an interesting side effect.
Wait, can you say more about, like you said, hey, I evaluate how I can ship this to customers. Like, what does that process look like? What are you thinking about?
Yeah, actually, this may be an aside, so I don't know how much time we want to spend here, but I've been having a lot of fun recently thinking more about like growth and go to market and like trying to systematize those things. So like, you know, for my Maven course, but just in general for things that I do. And so I try to map out like where are the landing page views going to come from? What's the conversion rate going to be? What's the promise? What's the journey of the customer? Am I going to be able to deliver on that journey? What's like that back end system that where one user gets another user? And if I can't draw that all out, I don't even start on making the product. I do all that stuff first, right? And trying to find distribution channels that work as an individual is hard, right? Because I'm not like Coca-Cola. I'm not going to buy ads for, you know, whatever. So I have limited options. And so I try to figure out like from that limited set of options, what's going to work for this idea or what's not going to work.
Do you have an example that maybe you could walk us through just like to make it more
sure?
Like,
yeah. Well, actually one that you're aware of. So I was working on this side project called ProtoKit. Basically what it is a tool for managing your prototypes. So I've come across this problem where teams are adopting these tools, but then all you have really is like this pane in Bolt or whatever tool of like your chats down the left-hand side. And a lot of my course, I talk about like forking and like other workflows to help the team move faster. And it's just very difficult to organize that content inside of Bolt or whatever tool, doesn't matter. And the second part is that there's like product workflows that aren't supported. So things like putting passwords on your prototypes that are published to the internet so random people can't find them, or collecting user feedback on your prototype if you want to share with users, or even just telling someone, hey, this is a prototype, like just setting context because it looks like your product, but it's not. And they're going to some random link and it's like, what am I looking at? So just like some of these problems that are around this prototyping idea. And so for me, it's like, okay, the first thing I did is like, how am I going to distribute this? I'm a part of a couple of Slack communities. I have my own course. Like I have distribution channels where I could talk to people about this problem and see if it resonates or not. And so I was like, okay, it's worth me spending 3 weeks a month putting this together, capturing a couple, let's say viral moments or clips of like how the tool would work, and then just sharing those and seeing if it resonates with people. And if it doesn't, then like there's nowhere to go. And if there does, then like I can keep testing and keep going. So that's a good example where I've had many other ideas where I haven't been able to figure out how I would distribute it, and so I just leave them.
I'll say the same thought I had,
go ahead,
Colin,
Tal.
is like the lag. I'm not a jerk. It's just a lag. I promise. But it just keeps happening only to Ben. I don't know
Sure,
why.
Tal. Sure.
I was gonna say that, like, for me, it dawned on me. I keep thinking like, oh, can I do this like AI product for PMs? And then I realized, wait, what I'm doing in the meantime with Maven is I'm building an audience and talking to a lot of PMs all the time, which is like the main two things that actually matter long term. It's doing like Colin, what you're doing with Maven is you're building an audience of people who are interested in either learning technical foundations or AI prototyping, which is like a really big market, and they trust you, right, over time, and like whatever you build, like now you can just focus around that. And for me, it's the equivalent product managers. And now exactly, I've adopted the same mindset where I'm now thinking from distribution. Okay, so what audience do I have? Let me just focus on that.
Yeah, exactly. It would be nice. Honestly, I kind of want to ship something outside of the product realm, just for fun. I don't know, to like people who run laundromats or something, just something completely independent, so I get like some broader experience. I could probably do something in health tech because that's my background, but yeah.
You should have
what I will
alter ego
say
that creates content just for laundromat owners.
Yeah.
I would take that Maven course, by the way. If you were going to start a course about how to buy and run a laundromat, like, I would subscribe. So that could be another go-to-market strategy right there.
I'll think about that one. Yeah.
I was going to say that one thing that I'm finding, because I'm also doing some kind of customer discovery, customer research. Thanks, Tal, by the way, for letting me do some of that with the folks in your Slack community. I'm finding that I want to say maybe 9 out of 10 people that I talk to have, I don't want to say unlimited budgets from their companies, but their charter from their companies is essentially, if you want to use an AI tool that will help you do your job better or more efficiently or scale your impact in some way, expense it and we'll let you know if there's a problem. And I think that probably covers like courses, learning materials, like a bunch of these kind of things. If anything, there's a company.
The only asterisk I'll ask there, Ben, is because big tech PMs are going to be listening to this, is like, that's not my reality. So yeah, I think it's probably what I've seen is like normally like 2,000 and smaller. That's 100% the case. But like the big companies, Microsoft, Google, etc., like they have.
It's a really good point.
Is stressed right now.
It's a really good point. It's an incredibly valuable point that I'm happy you brought up, because there is actually some chatter about like the role of the IT teams, and like CEOs historically looked at the IT teams as, I don't say cost centers, but almost like they think maybe about HR or lawyers, or they're just the people that are meant to just make sure we're checking the boxes on certain things. But now IT teams are literally getting in the way of teams being able to adopt the tools that the CEOs want their employees to adopt, which is creating a lot of friction within companies. And I've actually already seen a couple examples, I won't name any companies, where I don't want to say the IT team has been overridden, but basically the CEO told people like, screw IT, don't worry about what they say, just go use the tools. I'll figure out what to do about IT. And if I put myself in the shoes of big tech leaders like the guys at Google or Zuck at Meta, I can imagine that they would be really pissed off if they found out that the PMs or the people on their teams are unable to move as fast as they want or get the leverage they want of tools because IT is getting in the way.
Yeah. But what were you going to say, Ben? That I just wanted to add to asterisk, but you were like, yeah.
Wait, was I going to say something else?
Yeah,
I think I was done.
No, I think you're somewhere else with that, but before I interrupt you a little bit.
The budgets. Oh, I was just making a point around like budgets and like why there's a tremendous amount of exploration and the desire for people to play with these tools and have unlimited budgets, which is one reason maybe to not build for laundromats versus like just like theoretically Colin has nailed the distribution problem already with PM. So I was explore laundromats, but also I think you have a pretty good thing going in a market that has super deep pockets and a willingness to spend at the moment.
Yeah, I think I also have like, the shiny object syndrome to some degree, like probably many people in our field. So it's like when something's working, I'm kind of like, what if I restarted completely from scratch and solved this problem again? That seems more interesting than just like continuing to do what I was doing already. I don't know if you guys.
So you got to spice it up.
Yeah.
If you're in my DM threads with Tal, I think we're constantly thinking about how to blow up our own courses and do it completely differently and like make it fun for ourselves, like make it harder.
Yeah, but I think that's
Lots
like a
of,
little
lots
bit
of
different. Like I
unnecessary
think,
risks. Go ahead.
but I think that's different than going to a completely new industry where you have to rebuild your reputation, right? I think like the cool thing about like you, Colin, or Tyler, or Ben, like in your areas, you have built a strong reputation. You are building a LinkedIn following, and I think that just gives you an advantage because people already trust you, and anything that you give them, they're likely going to be interested. They're going to try it. They're going to give you feedback. Best case scenario, they buy it. And I think that's probably where go-to-market is going to go. Like I think people who are really good builders and tinkerers are going to find who don't have that reputation in a particular area. They're probably the smartest go-to-market is finding someone who has a big audience, who has big trust in the group and be like, hey, let's partner here. Let's go 50-50 and I'll build a product. You give me a distribution. And I think those partnerships make a lot of sense. And you're seeing with celebrities building businesses. And I would imagine that this is only going to get bigger and bigger.
Here's the thing. That's true, but it's like always been like that, right? I think now it's like Colin said, it's like there's just nowhere to hide. It's just like now, the fun of, I know exactly the fun of like, just hiding away and just building something for a few months and all the anticipation and being able to just like enjoy that, like, delaying reality. Don't have that anymore. So just can't ignore it. But I think that was always the bottleneck.
Yeah. I always say the same thing. Maybe this is a bit of a transition, but one of the most common like questions I get at the end of my course, and honestly just throughout, is like, how can I use this to build my own product? Because a lot of PMs want to build their own products, which makes some sense to me. And the thing that I always talk about is I always talk about distribution first. I always like figure out how to distribute the product first. If you want to have users, if you want to build the product for the experience of building the product, go for it. I think that's a valuable experience to try, to learn, to fail. I do it a couple times. But if the intent is get a side project out, get customers, get users, then yeah, it's always figuring out the distribution first. And yeah, I don't know if we want to talk more about side projects because, like I said, I've found like a surprising number of people.
Let's talk about side projects.
Sure. All right.
Let's talk about side projects. I think I saw Lenny's actually doing a like tech employee sentiment survey that I filled out this morning, and I think many people are about to fill it out. I predict that one of the findings from that survey that Lenny's gonna put out there is that many people are going to report as being dissatisfied at their job and wanting something different or wanting to do something else. It's anecdotally what I'm hearing, just like all the time from the people I coach and other PMs. If we connect that back to like side hustles and PMs using prototyping to build their own things, I would be shocked if there wasn't an increasing amount of energy going towards these tools with the goal of building something to carve an exit path from the company to like maybe do their own thing. And I'm curious what the other folks are seeing. But one thing I'll say about the go-to-market side is having a go-to-market plan and knowing how you're going to sell doesn't have to mean this like 10-page business plan on how I'm going to acquire traffic at scale and do keyword optimization or any of that stuff. I think it's like, how are you going to get your first 10 customers, right? And I think if you can answer, how am I going to get my first 10 customers that are happy to pay me? That feels like it's good enough. If you have a good answer to that question, I think that's good enough to get started and then keep really tight feedback loops, putting product in those people's hands. But I'm curious what other people think.
I have a really hot take. I think if someone is asking if I can start a side project, they're not equipped to start a side project. with all the resources that are out there, there's just so many opportunities to take initiative. And I just feel like even building is just so down funnel from what we just talked about that it's almost like if you're asking that question, you're going to have to go through like maybe 20 or 30 hoops. So you're going to have to figure out the answer yourself. So like you're asking that question in the first place. I'm just not sure how far you're going to get unless you start getting more agency. I don't know. That's just my hot take.
I think. Wait, Marc, so your point. Go ahead, Tal. Stupid Israeli time zone difference. No, I think, Marc, I just wanted to make sure Tel Aviv. I wanted to make sure I was following Marc's point. So Marc, what you're saying, the hot take is that if someone is out there almost like asking permission or asking like the questions of, should I do a side project or how can I use this to do a side project? You're saying that they're already several steps behind where they need to be to actually get to the yes because of how scrappy and resourceful and blah, 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 all the things about successful kind of like entrepreneurs that it's almost implied in the question that they're not ready in that sense.
Yeah. Like I feel like there's like one like kind of like tools like ChatGPT that you can just ask a lot of these questions and learn. I think also there's like a lot of content out there. And I just feel like the fact that your first reaction is like, let me build something. And like now like I can finally start a side project because I can accelerate my time to building. It almost implies that you don't really understand how to build a business. And then you're almost starting with the wrong foot, right? It's like you're starting with the wrong question that's going to lead you to down the path. And the likelihood that you get frustrated because you build a product and no one wants it, or you like kind of, I just think it's just, you're starting from a rocky start and from not a place of kind of agency almost. But again, it's like a half-baked thought. So welcome any pushback.
I think another way of saying it is like, damn it.
Go ahead, Tal.
Go, Tal.
I think another way of saying it is like the person asking Colin this is missing the fact that they're asking Colin. Colin didn't ask anybody. That's the real thing to learn there. It's a lot of things. If you read a book to learn to get good at something, it's like, do you want to be the person reading the book, or do you want to be the person who wrote the book after trying it themselves? That's two very different approaches. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only counterexample I'll give here, or maybe pushback, is I do think it's useful to have examples of people you know in your real life who have done something. Because it's very easy to like I couldn't go start Facebook and think of it to myself like, oh, I could succeed on the same scale as Mark Zuckerberg. But I guarantee you, if like I was around a group of people who had done that, I'd be like, well, actually, maybe I could, right? Because I saw what happened. I saw a little bit of the inside of what that actually means. And so I do think there is some value just in not seeing from the outside what someone has done, but seeing from the inside, like, hey, this is how that person solved this problem, or how they reasoned even about the problem, or those types of steps. I think it's useful not to copy them, but to just know that most of the time the person doesn't have the answer. Like, oh yeah, I don't know. I had to figure it out. These are the things that I did. And then this is what kind of worked. This failed. And you're like, oh, okay. So you're not perfect. You had to figure it out along the way. And maybe these are some learnings that you had. I think having that example is super helpful. But yeah.
I'd love to get tactical for a sec. Like when getting your first, so let's agree for a second. I think we can all agree that getting your first 10 customers should always be like the first milestone of a company, right? Get your first customer, sure. But like that could be your best friend or whatever. Get 10 customers, that kind of stretches you to think a little bit outside of your immediate, circle. 100 customers is even better.
And we say get customers, are you saying get paid customers or just get customers to use your product?
So it depends what you're building. If there's a real cost structure associated with it, like one of the ideas I'm toying with right now is going to have real costs associated with using it, because it's an AI play, and AI plays right now cost money. If you're going to do anything in AI, you're going to have to buy tokens to handle requests. So yeah, if someone wants to use this thing and I'm bleeding money giving it to them and they're like, wow, it's amazing, it's free, then I'm not learning that much about the market viability of that idea. So in this case, yes, 10 people who pay money to use the product would be what I talk about in this case. And I think one thing that I think about a lot is why people avoid the conversations that have nothing to do with showing your product. Like the discovery conversations, I want to learn more about your workflow. I want to understand your pain points. Like people trying to get to know the users and identify the fit, like has nothing to do with building product per se. But I don't think I've seen a better way to build trust with prospective users than doing those conversations. And I'm just curious if you guys have thoughts on that.
I think it's just uncomfortable and not as fun as building. Right? I think like you have to get yourself out there, right? You have to be willing to be rejected or be like, hey, like this doesn't resonate, or I don't have time to talk to you, or this is stupid. So I think it's almost, there's this fear of you're putting yourself out there. People might think like, hey, like maybe Marc is embarrassing himself because he thinks he can build this thing and wants to solve this problem. And then also you might learn something that doesn't agree with the preconceived idea of what you think the solution should be. So I think it's almost like, I think
that's a good thing though, right?
Yeah.
Like theoretically,
I agree.
Yeah, I view reality as this kind of unrelenting force that will punch you either. It's almost like you get to decide how early you want to get punched by reality. If you want to postpone the punch or if you want to get punched early. But my take is always, punch me early with reality so I can avoid wasting my time if there's not a there, or that punch actually makes it tighter. Like it compacts the density of the idea to something more crisp.
Yeah. I think you're a special person, or like in the sense of like, I feel like most humans do not enjoy getting punched. Like even
I'm not saying I enjoy it. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna
or
enjoy it.
or like just avoid it completely. Like I think that's just been my experience from talking to other people and friends. But yeah, I'm curious, what do you guys think? Tal, I think you're gonna say something.
Marc, I thought you were going to say to Ben, I think you're a special case in that you're good at your job. Like,
I mean
it's
that too.
that's the
That's
craft.
already implied.
That's the discipline.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm special, but I've learned this though from successful people. Like this is me just mimicking what I've seen successful founders do, successful builders. So maybe to Colin's point, if you don't have these examples, these kind of like role models in your orbit to model, then you just have never seen it before, right? Maybe.
Yeah. The only other thing to add there is I think a lot of people, success is like a linear thing, right? So like you get promoted by having good performance, not by failing a bunch of times in a row, right? So I think there's lessons that are different when you're trying to do something new. And if you're on a small team, like either Series A, Series B, maybe like the CEO is fine with you failing 5 times in a row because they get it. But I think in a lot of environments, like that's not the case, right? That's not rewarded per se. And so unless you're like either put yourself in a position where, that's what you gravitate towards, or you just have some other life experience where that becomes true, I think it's more common that people view success as I do the thing correctly, I get good performance, and then I get the reward. Not I do the thing, it goes poorly 5 times in a row. I figured out the right thing to do and it works, right? I think that's less common.
I think you're right.
So Jack Conte.
Yeah, go ahead, Tal. Go ahead. Yeah.
Jack Conte, the CEO of Patreon,
What about Jack?
He has a really good talk about how his success was really non-linear, and he has this amazing visualization of so many failures. Looks like Git commits of failure, and then success. And he also happens to be the only manager, CEO, founder I've had that when my team failed something like 10, 12 times in a row, gave us a trophy, like an enormous trophy for our team. But that's like really rare. And
that's
that
awesome.
environment let us take a lot of risks and do a lot of really cool things. But I don't think I've had that to that extent anywhere else.
That's it. I'm happy you shared that because what I was saying is I agree with what both Colin and Tal just said. And what I hate is the double standard that I've observed with founders when they become CEOs of kind of like growing companies and they penalize their teams for failing, because it's like you wouldn't even be in a position to hire me unless you tried a bunch of stuff and failed and then something worked and now we're here. And then you want your team to presumably be innovative and scrappy and like entrepreneurial, presumably on paper. And yet you're creating a culture that I won't name the company I've worked at, but I was literally told by a CEO that because this like brand new initiative I was leading, after 3 months, we had to sunset it. Like, even though we had really strong execution and literally validated all of the learnings just in the wrong way. There's no market for this. Basically penalizing me in a performance review for not getting on the scoreboard. And that's the kind of thing that it's like, man, like you've created like billions of dollars of market cap by failing with companies, and some of them are successful like this one, but how are you not seeing what the impact, like the downstream impact is of you saying that? Like what's the risk tolerance going to be like at your company? How much risk are people going to take to try new stuff if you tell them that they didn't get on the scoreboard because this brand new initiative that they're trying to get off the ground just proved that there was no demand for it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why big companies get caught up in incrementalism and not taking big shots, because there's that fear of, hey, like that's how you get promoted, like little wins, right? And like you consistently have a good track record. But if you go at 0 to 1, you tackle something that has ambiguity, the fail rate is much higher. And who wants to take that risk for their career? So it's, I don't know. It's a hard problem. I don't know how I would reward it as a founder. Like I think, but it's harder to it's like almost you're measuring the input versus the output almost, right? It's like, and I think that's a little bit harder to do sometimes, right? When you're measuring the rest of the company on outputs, right? Like it can be like, hey, like Ben really ran that user research validation like very smoothly, had a ton of calls, like constantly updated his hypotheses, like proved and disproved a bunch of things, learned a ton. But at the end of the day, like if you didn't, I don't know, bring $10 million or $100 million for the company, and this other person changed the button and ran a bunch of A/B tests and led to all these things, like it's just, I think we're just trying to compare apples to apples when we shouldn't do that.
I mean, look, it's one thing if I'm the guy that's like beating the table, being like, this is something we have to try. I have so much conviction in this, it's going to work. And then they're like, cool, they give me some funding and I go and I chase it and it doesn't work. That's one thing. Yeah, sure. Penalize me for that. Cause there's a large amount of agency that I had. Like that was my idea. But if the same CEO who tells you that you're failing to get on the scoreboard is the one that told you to go after that idea in the first place, which was the case in this example, and then you did a really good job of like rigorously testing the hypotheses of whether there's a there, and the result is no, and then they come to you and like you failed, I'm sorry, but that's kind of fucked.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's poor management on the CEO side.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay, done venting. I want this to turn into a therapy session.
We're here for it.
You're just evoking all the memories for me of parallel situations. So I'm just silently going through those flashbacks. Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, I think
the one thing that. Yeah.
What was that, Colin?
I was just saying, I think everyone's been through something like that at some point.
The one thing I wanted to talk about too is, Tal, you had this idea of like double threat, triple threat PMs. Do you mind just framing like your thinking and your observations there? Because I think it's like a really interesting topic and kind of ties to everything we've been talking about.
Yeah, I think one really very specific phenomenon that AI is creating is like, think before AI, people you've worked with that were double threats, meaning like that front-end engineer that like was really passionate about design and UX and craftsmanship, or a salesperson who was really good with data, right? Like when that, like both those skills, even like 1.5 skills are in the same brain, they like, the cycles happen really quickly, like the communication happens really quickly, you just get like such better output, right? And it's like just incredible what you get from that. And I think AI allows more people to be double, triple threats. So it allows like a product manager to iterate with themselves, first of all, with AI prototyping, right? Just like to see what you were thinking, be like, oh, you know what? That's not what I really wanted. Let me iterate a few times. Instead of wasting a designer's time with that same cycle you could have done yourself. And then coming to the designer a little bit more baked about what you were thinking. The same thing can go with a product analyst. If you could iterate, maybe not final results and not statistical precision, but you can iterate a few times on the visualization that you wanted, or like a way of asking a question with data, and go through that a few times yourself and be like, oh, okay, that's what I really was trying to get at. And then you go work with the data analyst. That's way more empowering for the data analyst. You're way more baked when you arrive there. So I think there's like, I'm thinking there's so many more opportunities for designers to do the same, for engineers to do the same. I think that's one of the coolest things you're seeing, no matter what kind of prototyping you're doing with AI.
I think that's spot on. The ability to have less conversations about something, like that to get from idea to whatever the next step is, being able to happen in your own head, I think is critical. Are there any teams that are rejecting this that you guys are seeing, or any types of, I don't know, are there people that are like, no, not for us, not for me, I don't want to do this? Colin, you're nodding.
Yeah.
What are you seeing?
I think that there's still some, so this is again from feedback from folks that I talk to, either for my course or this that I know in product and in tech companies. There is some like defensiveness about roles at times. I think this depends a lot on the company culture and how people think about their job and what their job is. Like, what is a good output of your role? But yeah, there's still some defensiveness. And I think partially this also has to do with how it's introduced, who brings it in. Because if it's like a PM who wants to do some validation stuff, and the designer might not love that, but if it's the designer who brings it in and the PM picks it up and they're working together, then yeah, there's probably no problem. So I think there's some, but yeah, just to go back to the kind of root question, definitely some defensiveness at times, depending on company culture, around roles and outputs and like, are you trying to do my job type thing?
Yeah. And I think that's fair. And I think it's interesting, probably like the main conversations that are happening right now in the product space is around kind of like maybe PMs doing some of the quote unquote work that was done by designers, or even I'm even talking to some product leaders that are using Cursor or Copilot to do like UI changes or changing labels or text that and feel very comfortable doing PR. So it's like they're almost, and I think depending on the company culture, people are going to be like sick because I hated doing those. Like that was a waste of time to change those, like that copy. And now you can do it for me. Same with like designers, like cool. Like I have actually like a thought partner that's actually sparring with me and like we can have better conversations faster because he's like bringing some of his own ideas in a way that's visual, which is actually my preferred language. I think there's other people that are maybe like a little bit more are sensing that fear as, oh shit, like my job is about to fundamentally change and I need to figure out how do I value But my other hypothesis is that there's going to be other functions that are maybe like on the next circle of influence, like marketing or UXR, where it's going to be even like more abrupt of like, oh shit, like this PM has been running like UXR sessions without me, like with these prototypes. And all of a sudden kind of like, I need to refigure out like, how do I add value to this organization? And actually like this PM is also using ChatGPT and Claude to get feedback on the questions that I'm asking and how to ask them to make sure they're not leading and analyzing that data. So I think, and same with marketing, right? I remember at Asana, like when I had to get like an asset, right? Like some sort of graphic or whatever, like I had to send a request a month before to the marketing team for so the content could create it. Now I can literally just go into ChatGPT, like their image generation model is incredible. Like, why would I do that, right? It's just, there's no point for me to do that. And I think those people are probably going to realize a little bit later they're getting cut into the flow. And I think that's going to be like a very rude awakening of like, oh shit, what's going on here?
I think people got to embrace this stuff or risk getting replaced with someone who embraces the stuff. I don't think the stuff itself, like the tools themselves are, I mean, this is not something I came up with, but I subscribe to the whole, like, the tools aren't going to replace you. The AI is not going to replace you, but people with using the AI will. So yeah, I feel for, like I said, and I don't remember a few episodes ago, like if someone's not excited about what feels like the golden age of tools, there's literally never been this, like if you like building stuff and you're creative, there have never been so many exciting things to play with, like toys, Lego blocks, tools, whatever you want to call them. So if someone is not excited about it, maybe there's something deeper going on about them maybe not wanting to do what they're doing or to get better at what they're doing.
Yeah. One of the ideas I like here is just seeking out high leverage work. So I think that's the primary like mental framing that keeps you happy, honestly, is like if you're, the designer and the PM starts prototyping stuff, it's like, okay, what's the highest leverage work that I can do to like move the team forward? And maybe that's fine that the PM wants to express their ideas visually. Like, who cares, right? Because now we can move faster on testing these ideas. So what can I do? What is the team's goal? And just keep reminding yourself of those things. Because there's been times in my career where like, I stood up like a 0 to 1 recommendation engine at the last company I was at. And so a lot of the work at the beginning was like very technical, like trying to figure out what other services are we going to integrate with? Who are these other teams? Like all this stuff. And then as time went on, like those patterns were cemented and I don't need to do that anymore. So the highest leverage work for me was communicating with like executives in finance on what is the margin we're enabling by using this service, or like doing a lot of more stakeholder management stuff. Like I would never was like upset by the fact that I was like, oh, I don't get to do the technical stuff anymore. It's just, what is the value I can add? And that just changes contextually based on what your team is doing, where you're at.
Do you think there's something? Go ahead, Tal. Yeah, go ahead.
You guys know there's a really well-known article by the First Round Review called Giving Away Your Legos, or Learn to Give Away Your Legos, or something like that. I think it should be required reading if it's not already for anybody joining like a hypergrowth company. And the cool thing about that article is that was written long before AI. And it's only just dawning on me through this conversation. It's the same phenomenon that was always there. Like the most high leverage people were the ones who were constantly not attached to what they were doing and asking, Colin, like you said, they were already doing that behavior. And now it's just, you can't ignore it like you could before, as much as you could before. Or it's happening way faster. It's more in your face. But I think it's exactly the same dynamic. Like some people are very good at giving away their Legos. Some people are not very good at that. And you can just see the difference like way more starkly with AI.
I think some people, when I think of what kind of people don't want to give away their Legos, I think what comes to mind to me is people who maybe define themselves as like the holders of those Legos. That's so they don't want to give them away, because if I give them away, who am I without my Legos? And look, I've been there where like I've made myself redundant in jobs because like I've gotten things working well enough where I could leave for a week and everything just works great. And people can make decisions without me. And I love that. But the risk you take is that you're no longer necessarily needed for that exact thing. I've always liked doing that. But I think if I wanted like job security, quote unquote, that would be an anti-goal of mine. If things can work well without me, it means I'm not needed and therefore I'm disposable, right?
Although I would say like at the same time, like I would want that type of person in my company, because it means like they're just like, they're really good at like teaching and then leveraging, and then kind of like, then I can put them into the next problem, right? Almost like, and I think that's super valuable, because that's to me is just like a sign of a healthy like company and a healthy team, that someone knows, hey, here's how I train everything. I distribute responsibility. I trust the people around me, and things work well when I'm not there. Like I think that's like the sign of a good leader for me is if they go for 2 weeks and they're gone, like things work really well because like they've almost groomed everyone. Are very clear about where the team is going. And I think it's just, as Colin was saying, I think it's like your job is like always thinking, what is the highest leverage thing I can do for this company and this team? And if you keep doing that, you're going to make yourself very indispensable, right? Like, for example, like for a UXR researcher, maybe I don't need to train everyone anymore on like how to ask questions, but I could create a custom GPT that actually trains everyone how to do it and helps them redo their interview guide, and maybe also reviews their calls and gives them feedback, right? And that on itself, you just scale yourself way more than you were before. Or maybe with like marketing, right? All of a sudden, now you can test a lot more different visuals, right? And you can test different ads a lot quicker. And the speed of learning that you've enabled for that company is just super valuable.
What's coming to mind to me is just like the incentive structures. Because like I've been in environments where there's literally no incentives for anyone to do that stuff. And like all of the incentives are for them to get all the credit themselves. And if something gets done and they weren't involved with it directly, then they get no credit for it, even though they might have empowered a bunch of other people to achieve those results. So I think the incentive structures in companies, I don't know if they're yet at a point where companies incentivize UX researchers to remove the need for UX researchers as part of like the happy path for projects, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you I mean, push back on me if you think, but like, do you guys think companies are good at incentivizing this kind of like rewarding this kind of stuff?
No. But I do think it's probably going to change. I think like my guess is that, and this is like a hypothesis, once we start moving more and more products to outcome-based pricing, and like we start to realize, hey, like you're paying for the result and the solution rather than just like a seed, I think that's going to change the equation of like, do you rather just have someone who you're paying 100K and it's only working 10 hours, but it's like, maybe unlocking like 10 millions of value a year versus someone you're paying like 100K and is working 40 hours and maybe only unlocking like 300K a year. So I think people are, especially with AI, I think the gap or the delta of productivity is going to keep getting bigger and bigger. And I think people are going to have to start evaluating people based on what they can accomplish versus like how much they're working.
Yeah. Maybe one thing to add here, like I've actually, because I left my job in November, and I personally struggle with the idea of not being productive all the time, because I thought that was going to be the way that I was when I quit. I was going to work 12 hours a day. Of course I am, because I'm working for myself. Why wouldn't I? And what I found is like, there is no relationship at all between that idea and any type of outcome that I care about. And I can not work for a week. Like, I have to do stuff, but I can do the bare minimum. And it doesn't necessarily change the outcomes whatsoever. And so I'm still unlearning to some degree some of the things that I had learned from having a job, which is like sometimes just like testing ideas and then like making good decisions has way more leverage than any number of like small things I can do in combination that fills up my time. I still have to maintain the business and all that sort of stuff, like answer emails and whatever. But yeah, the times in which I've tried to produce the most have not gotten me the best outcomes. And the times when I've like really been intentional about what I'm producing, I've had much higher return on that time. So anyway, I think it's definitely like for people like us, it's maybe easier, right? Because no one's measuring me except for me. But I do think it's true that like a little bit more intentionality, higher leverage work it does go a very long way. But yeah.
What you got me thinking about, Colin, is just I started this kind of fractional portfolio career stage. I didn't know what the accountability mechanisms were going to be that allowed me to hit my goals. And I didn't even know what the goals are because there's no one to define them for you. And I set some goals for the first couple months and tried to like hold myself accountable to hitting them and learned a little bit. But I found that I abandoned goal setting after about 2 months because what was happening organically was I discovered I can't help but do productive things. Like I'm just like uncomfortable when I'm not being productive. And when there's no boss, when you don't have a boss, you don't have recurring meetings or anyone else telling you how to spend your time, you find that your energy just naturally starts going in certain directions. And Yeah, I feel like chasing, like just like literally following that energy and investing in whatever those things are. It could be like 6 different things in the course of 2 hours, and then I'm just out of juice for the day. But the 6 things I did during those 2 hours have all kinds of positive benefits. So yeah, my experience has been very similar to yours. And it's actually something we talked a little bit about yesterday too, but I'll share it again. But like I recently listened to Lenny's conversation with Rahul Vora from Superhuman, and Rahul was saying that he doesn't track his time the way that a lot of people say you should track your time, where you put something on the calendar and that means I have to do it or else bad things will happen. He's like, I'll sit down to do a task, and if something bubbles up that is like, I'm working on thing A, and like thing B bubbles up, and it's like, Rahul, you should focus on thing B. He trusts that is coming from, there's some kind of like subconscious knowing in him that thing B is actually a more important thing to do right now. So he just goes and he literally drops thing A and goes to thing B and like works on thing B and until it's either done or until thing A becomes the most important thing again, or until thing C pops up. And I think that's very similar to the way I've been feeling about how I spend my time now. I don't know if that's resonating for you guys, or I know, Marc, you're like really disciplined on the discipline scale, but that feels like a good articulation of what the accountability has felt like, is mostly just to follow the energy.
Yeah, I think without following the energy, you cannot work very intensely and very productive for a long period of time, right? I think the reason why you can be productive, for me at least, is I'm energized by the work I'm doing. I'm having fun. A lot of times it feels like play. I would be lying if that's the case every day. There's definitely a lot of days where I have to do shit that I just don't want to do, but I have to do. And I think that's part of being on your own, right? And figuring out an entrepreneurship. But I think in the long term, it's really hard to just work hard and be implicitly motivated if you're not have some sort of energy that fits that and that keeps you pushing forward.
For me, what really helps is I'm a very bottoms up person. Like I'm actually probably surprised a few people on how little I measure. Just like you, Ben, I like just don't do goals. But I'm like very much, all right, it's like I just have this very clear focus. What are the 4 swim lanes that I care about? Like for me specifically now, I imagine the 4 pots on the stove that I need to keep like in a rolling boil or like simmering. And then everything I do, I ask, is it in one of these 4 swim lanes? Cool. The rest will just, if I just do that on a regular basis, like help each one of those out, push those along, put a little bit of energy into each of those. And I just trust that like downstream, everything's going to work out. That would not work in a company that does OKRs. No manager would ever want to hear me say that, right? But fortunately now I can work that way. But yeah, it's because it's like I have really clear focus. The other thing, because all of us here are solopreneurs or solo pluspreneurs, is it's just amazing how little bullshit I have in my day. Like how much before, how many meetings I had, how much overhead that is completely gone now. And so non-trivial. I feel like, oh my God, it's so high leverage, right? Some of that stuff I take to rest. I take back as like rest and make myself more creative. And some of that is like, holy shit, I'm like worth so many more people than I was worth at a larger company.
Yeah. I'm curious, Tal, how I love the approach of like, there's this 4 lanes that I care about. And if they don't fit into those lanes, I'm going to put it into a backlog for later. How often do you revisit those lanes? And what is that process like?
Yeah. I'll just to make it concrete, I'll say what they are. Like for me as a Maven instructor, right, to have a thriving business, I need to be giving a lot of value away for free for trust and reputation and recognition, aka LinkedIn, podcasts. I need to be giving away a lot of value for free in return for email addresses, which is building a mailing list and like webinars and things like that. And I need to be giving a lot of value for money behind. That's the paywall of the course and other things I do. And the 4th swim lane, or the 4th pot that I need to keep simmering on the stove, is like underlying all of that is, I call it R&D. I need to be messing around with AI tools. I need to be doing user research with actual product managers. I need like anything that's giving me just insights in connection to the real world. If I do that, then all the other ones become really easy. So if I'm always doing one on any of those. And so I use it both ways. One is when something comes in, I'm like, is it one of these? If it's not X, I have nothing to do with this. It's not going to help me. It's just a waste of time. It could be good for my ego. It's a waste of time. And the other thing I do is if I get like nervous if I get like a panic attack, it's like wait, hold on. Let me imagine the 4 pots. Have I done something lately for each of these? Have I done for pot number 1? Have I done something lately for pot number 2? Oh, okay. You know what? I haven't done anything in a while for pot number 4. Cool. Let me make sure that's first thing I do tomorrow. So it's like kind of like a pot and simmering stove. It like if you kind of neglect it for a little bit, it's still going to be hot. It's fine. The Colin was saying you can neglect things for a little bit. It's going to be fine. That's how I use that as a mental checklist to that confidence. And I'm like, that's my bet is if I just focus on that on a regular basis, consistently over time, and put my energy in that and nothing else, everything else will work out.
I know we're
And the way sorry, go for it,
man.
Colin.
I was going to say, I know
There
we're close to time, but I just want to add like an additional perspective. Maybe this resonates with other folks as well. Just like, I feel like I'm the opposite, to be honest. So I thought it'd be fun to share. I don't know if you're familiar with opportunity solution trees from Teresa Torres.
Yeah.
That's literally how I think about everything. Like the entirety of my life is, what is the outcome that I'm trying to produce? What are the problems or opportunities that align to that? What are the set of solutions I can try? Have I tried it? I prioritize, hit the outcome. What's the next outcome? And I just do that on a loop. So anyway, I just thought it'd be fun to share like an opposing perspective. But yeah, I read that book a long time ago, and I've literally used that personal, professional, like ever since. But yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that.
We
I do have to drop.
I think we're not that different. Anyways, it's another half an hour.
Yeah.
I think the commonality is north. I suspect we have North Stars and things that we're still trying to reach, and how we get there is probably different. But I got to drop for another call. This was freaking awesome. Tal Raviv on LinkedIn, Colin Matthews on LinkedIn. And then I would say probably we recommend people go check out your Maven courses. Is there a place that you want to send them that is not your, maybe you just want to plug your Maven courses or anything else?
Yeah, go for it, Tal.
Yeah, I have a Maven course, like Ben said. It's called Build Your Personal PM Productivity System and AI Copilot. It's a mouthful. It's half of it is about very low-tech productivity fundamentals. And then we go into using AI as a PM. I really believe that no need to touch AI until you really get the fundamentals down. But then we go all out on AI. Actually, this upcoming cohort includes an AMA with Colin, featured guest star, and a lot of other cool surprises. So yeah, next cohort starts May 19th.
Cool. And Colin?
Yeah, I have 2 on Maven. And also you can follow me on Substack if you want to check out the kind of content that I produce. But technical foundations, if you're a PM who doesn't understand technology and you want to, come check that out. And then AI prototyping if you want to get better at prototyping with AI, the stuff we're talking about today. And then check that one out as well.
Cool. We'll include links to those in the show notes.
Yeah.
Marc, anything else you want to say before we wrap?
No, just love spending time with you guys. That was a lot of fun. And yeah, I'm excited for round 2. Hopefully soon.
Yeah, sounds great.
Peace.
Likewise.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.